Dear colleagues, starting up as a young architect, I was working mostly completely alone. I was depending on my limited knowledge in all the kind of situations that an architect is confronted with. Decenniums later, I was leading a huge project with a team consisting of persons from more than 12 nations. So in very different environments, I have reflected on the quality, adaptability and limitations of architectural knowledge, as it has been demonstrated for me by architects with educations from a variety of schools and different national, cultural and socio-economical frameworks. The term wicked problem was introduced in the 70s by the social scientists Rittel and Weber. And wicked problems has no easily described solutions, simply because the parameters that create or at least influence the specific problem are changing so rapidly. A seemingly correct answer in spring might be wrong in the next autumn, or definitely wrong in a neighboring country or region. The EAAE, in collaboration with ACE, launched the Wicked Problem project 3 years ago, focusing on how European architect education meet new challenges and the so-called new normals after the millennium shift. The project addresses 3 major areas of challenges, which is sustainability, heritage, and the content of an architect's professional knowledge. A European think tank was established for each of these 3 problem areas. My work has been as member of the think tank dealing with professional knowledge. And as a backdrop or new normal for our think tank has been the huge level of unemployment in Southern Europe and the eroding and more limited roles for the architects in Northern Europe. An initial question was posed by the project: should something be changed in European architectural education to increase the employability? We found that to find the characteristics of an architect's knowledge was definitely necessary, not at least the specific professional knowledge. But this proved to be indeed a wicked problem. Since this is in a reality in constant evolution with blurred borders. But still, after many discussions, and our think tank can be working like the other 2 tanks for 3 years nearly, we came up with this definition, which has proved to be useful in the discussion and work we have done. Now, in the middle of this body of knowledge, you have the disciplinary knowledge, which is the huge amount of design training, knowledge on design planning, basics in building technique and material physics, theory, history, simply the normal curriculums obtained in most schools in Europe. But the layer outside is what we define as practical knowledge, which is about law and codes, normal project roles of an architect, some basic management and procedures to execute the disciplinary knowledge in an actual country or legal area. And now the third layer in this heap of knowledge of an architect, you have the specific professional knowledge, which is related to how you deal with people, with clients, with users, how you set up intelligent project model for actually execute the thing in a complex communication situation with other professionalities, how you manage and actually deal with the running of an office, or how you negotiate with contracts and things which is specifically related to your professional knowledge, according to this definition, which we agree, of course, might be discussed again and again and in evolution. But it was necessary and useful to have an agreement before we started the next step in our work. Now, the next step was actually to find out what are done in European schools today when it comes to education on these different levels. And we choose a representative number of schools in different countries. Our plan was approved by the EAAE at their assembly in Milan 2 years ago nearly. A questionnaire was sent to these schools, and the responses have been systematized in a simple way. This is not science, but it gives a proper picture. Some short reference to findings, which will be presented in a book later this year, in a more fully way, is like this, that all schools, actually, all of them give education on professional and also these practical themes, which are more complicated to learn in the school situation, taking for granted that the disciplinary thing is running well, so to say. But the volume of this professional knowledge is in all schools relatively small, never valued to more than 20 out of a total of 300 ECTS as a total architectural education. A majority of these schools intend to cover a broad set of relevant aspects, but with no clear priority to them, as we will point out in more precise ways. Still, of course, the practical aspects like law and codes and regional framework for being an architect, working as an architect, are given most attention. A majority of these schools give education on these practical themes, as I say, through mandatory courses on bachelor level. And in addition, elective courses are often offered on master level. That's the situation now. And it's strange also that it doesn't differ so much as we thought. They seem to have more or less the same or similar approaches to this. I guess that many of you have heard employers in architectural offices complain and say that young architects know too little about how things are done, that they doesn't know how to make correct detailed drawings, that they doesn't know the necessary forms or papers you have to deal with to obtain a building permit, and so on. So as a next step in the work, we decided to ask a simple question. What types of knowledge should an architect ideally have to be more interesting to the employers and to the market? And we expected again to hear the complaints of lack of professional knowledge. And we prepared for this discussion then with the ambition to meet all parties involved, like master students themselves, so to say, recently educated architects, professors, private architectural offices, small and big, and public offices that employ architects both in Spain and Norway. This proved to be a very fruitful series of meetings, and we are fully aware, of course, that the small number of offices, employers, and school visited make this study very limited. Clearly not a solid basis for hardcore conclusions. However, we were surprised to find that so many respondents were thinking actually different from what we had expected, and also that there was some clear agreement out there, which was surprising to us. We have, as I won't go, I won't detail in any way, but still we are preparing for the last and summing up report of this 3-year project now. So what I'm presenting here is simply now 4 statements, which are not even completely polished in the way of saying things. They are not organized clearly, but still this is a finding we think is interesting, that a young student or a job seeker should have this curiosity, ability to work in team, decision-making ability, and so on, which is more important to employers than, which is perhaps obvious, but a bit surprising also, that it comes from small, big offices and everywhere. Now, insight to this complexity has to be given. All of us agree upon it, but it is fairly difficult in a way also. And it is here that other ways of doing education than lectures are necessary to work with. It's pointed out that students definitely should learn more about normal procedures. This is again a very clear statement made after the discussions. And here we touch one of the more sensitive and definitely huge problem areas, but everybody agree of this group of respondents, at least, that during the education or the basic 4 or 5 year situation, internships or practical experience is highly recommended. Let me end up where I started. Through my work the last decades, I've worked really with all sorts of young architects, and I've come to the conclusion that it's true that attitude really is meaning a lot, actually the most. Because young architects' knowledge in this disciplinary sector on theory, design, development are often impressive and mostly sufficient. The more specific professional knowledge has to mature through practice. And as a last comment here, the soft point in this picture is the importance of language, which isn't mentioned. But when communication and discussions grow more and more important to have an increased employability, we have to accept that it still is a situation that lack of language or lack of language competence actually still is one rather high barrier to an open and fluid architectural environment in Europe. Thank you.